Hey, what's up, Wolfpack? This is Ryan, the anomalous ambassador of the airwaves. I just got in. Quite the day. Lots going on. Got to take this off. I absolutely despise wearing ties. But yeah, lots going on. Crazy day. I've been dealing with citizens throughout the country on a variety of different things. Let's get into it. What do we have going on? Let me get to the meat. Something crazy that happened, absolutely wild that happened to me, and that is, man. All right, I got a call today. I got a call. If many of you may be familiar with some of the work I've done with cattle mutilations in and around the Uinta Basin of Utah. Now, there is an incident, for those of you who do not know, which occurred July 3rd, 2025, at the Martinez Cattle Company. And it included a cattle mutilation. Now, I got to know the owner of this cattle company very well. I went out to his ranch. I did a deep dive into the land itself, the corpse, the carcass, I should say, and we looked at what has transpired at his property. He's had multiple cattle mutilations. He has had some very interesting high strangeness take place at the ranch. It's got an amazing ancient history. And our investigation has led us down a number of rabbit holes. He was interviewed by Linda Moulton Howe. I set that up and they had a great conversation. I introduced him to Dustin Eskelson, our wonderful Utah MUFON director. And Dustin has done an amazing amount of work with this particular case as well. And there's cameras everywhere now on the property. This call that I got today was pretty wild because when I first initially went out to see this carcass, this cattle mutilation, I and other researchers that were there got sick. Literally, the next 2 days, I was almost worthless. And it was unfortunate because I had a lot to do. But whatever energy is transpiring there is not isolated to that location. It's much like the hitchhiker effect, if you've heard that in the Uinta Basin of Utah, where you take something home with you. It's not an ice. There's something I dare call energy releasing about this property. You get there and you take a certain energy home. And this is an area that has history dating all the way back to the Fremont Indians. And Paul is an amazing individual, very intelligent, very matter of fact, nuts and bolts individual. Now, this is chilling. To give you a bit of a history of what's transpired on this property, it's very chilling. There was an event where law enforcement was, and I've had to deal with law enforcement today. This is insane, but a separate issue, having to do with literally the almost burning down of a property of mine. And that's all I know so far, so that's all I can really report on. But what I can tell you is that law enforcement was moving a individual who had been in their custody in front of this ranch, this cattle company. And somehow this individual escaped the security of the vehicle he was driving in. Now, if you follow my theories on low vibrational dark energy, I believe that there is a fine line between neurosis and possession and I've gone into that. And this is, I'm talking about, yeah, demonic possession, these dark entities that can attach themselves to people. And I believe this case is a case where a dark energy attached itself to this individual. This individual was able to escape the security of the vehicle he was being transported in. And he jumped out of the vehicle that was going at a high rate of speed. I've heard allegedly 75 miles an hour. I don't know if that's accurate. Jumped out of the vehicle and ran into the ranch, led law enforcement on a multi-hour rampage of a chase, not only on foot. Not only was he able to evade them on foot for a great deal of the time, but then he stole an all-terrain vehicle on the property and led them on a wild goose chase throughout the many thousands of acres. This is a very large ranch. The many thousands of acres, disrupting ancient, historic Fremont Native American sites, disturbing these ritual sites, these ancient sites. That there's multiple sites on the property that trace back to the Fremont Indians. And this may have also kind of released some sort of energy as he damaged some of these sites during this all-terrain vehicle chase with law enforcement behind him. Eventually, after he stole this vehicle on the property, he was stopped, but there's been countless other developments since then, including another cattle mutilation. Now, prior to this event, there were two other cattle deaths that may have very well been cattle mutilations. There are lights in the sky. This particular cattle mutilation was very troubling, very strange, and it includes perhaps some occult, some dark adepts on the property, because there are videos and still images of what appear to be either people or entities. And this animal was killed in a manner that is very similar to your typical cattle mutilation. The anus cored out, the sexual organs removed, the anus cored out with a 6-inch depth, cauterized with the wound itself is cauterized with at least 300-degree heat or more. There's absolutely practically no blood anywhere. The tongue removed, the eye socket cored out and removed, the optic nerve, the entire optic canal cored out, removed. As I said, the sexual organs removed. And we captured what I can only say is a stench when we first arrived there. And this stench is something he warned me about. The rancher warned me about, and I had a hard time believing it when I first got there. It was a stench that was chemical in nature, smelled almost like a mix of ozone, sulfur, formaldehyde, very laboratory smelling, as if you were in a laboratory, not out in the middle of a ranch with thousands of acres, a field with sagebrush and all these natural smells. What was also very odd is that there were zero insects, no bugs around at all, like no larvae, no maggots. And this thing had been there, and no predators had come by and even investigated. Okay, I'm going to jump into the chat, and then we'll get into the phone call I got today from the rancher. Fearlessly Phoenixing, Merry Christmas. How's it going? Yeah, she said, I've been waiting on the info. That's correct. It was a big Wagyu bull. And so no, this fire, okay, I'm going to get into this a little bit. Now, this is wild. Over the weekend, as many of you know, I have a variety of rentals. And over the weekend, I'm not going to go into names or dox anybody, but over the weekend, I got a message from a concerned person who helps me with a variety of things, saying that they had heard that someone had threatened or actually tried. I don't know 100% yet. That's why I was on the phone with law enforcement and the sheriff's office today. Threatened and actually tried. I don't know if they threatened or they actually tried to burn one of my homes down with people inside it. And talk about, this is a scenario, again, back to the neurosis and possession. When people get angry, that rage, when we all, if you just add drugs or alcohol to that, I believe you open uh space within your vessel for dark energies to pop in, because these are things that people would never normally do. And to be 100% honest, I'm not worried. I'm not worried about, I mean, obviously, in a real world sense, at some point, I have to be worried about the property. But at this point, I'm not worried about the property at all. I'm more worried about the individual. I'm more worried about his family members and loved ones, etc. Nobody's been hurt. That's the good news. There's been, from what I understand, a lot of damage, right? But this is an excellent example of why, especially this time of year, is charged. I feel that, when I was at the heyday of my drinking and using, this time of year was always like negatively charged because there's so many expectations with family, with friends, with personalities. And I don't know if any of that had anything to do with this. I do believe that the alcohol and potentially other substances had something to do with it, according to what I'm gathering. But I'm not, like I said, I'm not going to get into that. That's a totally different issue. But I think the important part is that sometimes people, it's a lot like this this Rob Reiner, Nick Reiner scenario, right? There's footage out right now of them going to a very nice restaurant earlier in the night, and everybody seems like they're having a good time, happy. Little did they know that hours later there would be this horrific event. I mean, here roughly around the same time of year, we know that Nick Reiner had problems with alcohol and drugs, and I think that's the main issue here. Is addiction is such a disturbing development, and it's something that I think our country and our society and our culture has to foundationally attack, because it opens, in my opinion, just opinion, it opens the door to a multitude of dark energies that can enter people, and then the consequences are catastrophic. So let's move on. Okay, Ryan, don't you have to answer now? But if this is live, what's the new poster on the wall behind me? So that's always been there, but that is the Cult of Ball. I had it a little bit lower. I had it a little bit lower down, kind of around where this guy is. And then I also have a Mars Attacks guy that I always keep in my office, but he's just out of camera. And then I have the massive flag, which I do put up. It usually covers most of that stuff. But I've moved the poster from the lower part to the upper part. But that is the Cult of Ball. The that back to dark energies. That hideous cult that has gone and infiltrated most major cultural centers throughout mankind. Of course, Moloch, Baal. There's a number of different dark lords, if you want to call them that. And it's just a good reminder of exactly what we're talking about. Great question, by the way, EDP. I like that. And then we have another question below that. Fearlessly Phoenixing, not too much more of a background of us knowing he's dealt with mutilations and then now going in. Yep, the one in the summer, correct. Now there's cameras everywhere. 100%. He's really got on top of it. I've sent some technology to him. Others have as well. I've connected him with people that are in positions to help him, former FBI, of course, a number of others. Did it happen at the exact time, similar to how you got the phone call about the crazy plumbing incident? Yes, that happened. So when I first got to the animal, the minute I was within inches of the animal, and investigating, I got a phone call. This is strange that you mentioned that actually, because it's very similar, isn't it? The minute I was close to the animal, I got a phone call. And the phone call was basically, and get this, well, I don't want to go that far. I can't relate too much information about but yeah, that was actually I got a phone call that all the pipes had burst in a home. I won't say whether it's the same home or not, but all the pipes had burst in the same home. So there's a congruency here that you just pointed out that I had not noticed fearlessly. So you've just kind of blown my mind with the synchronicity. And then I get this phone call, and yes, I find out. And these entities oftentimes work with elemental forces, fire, water, wind. So this is interesting. But I knelt down next to this animal, this cattle mutilation with this horrific laboratory smell, completely mutilated, eye socket gone, all of the typical, it had the oval, everything was exactly textbook. No predation, zero bugs, zero anything. And then I immediately, when I got inches away from the animal and started investigating, got this call. All the pipes in a home had burst, not in the cold. It was in the middle of the summer. Pipes just don't burst, but they had. There was no pressure fluctuations that can sometimes cause these sorts of things. Nothing like that. Absolutely inexplicable bursting, very expensive repair, but inexplicable bursting of pipes. Let's go down in the chat a little bit. So that's a really interesting point. Now we have fire. Ryan, don't you have to answer? Da, da, da. Okay, not too much more. Okay, got that. And now there's, yep. Did this happen at the exact same time, similar to when you got the phone? Yes, good point. The Kabbalah on the wall. That's correct, David. Cult of Ball. I am so glad that I'm sober now. The holidays were always a mess when 100%. And this is, I talked to a buddy and he said the same thing. He just hates this time of year because we're expected by family members to put up a certain persona. We expect things from others. And everybody's just demanded to perform, right? Dinner has to be perfect. The presents have to be perfectly wrapped. The tree's got to be up. You have to get enough presents for everybody, no matter your financial situation. You have to do all these things. And what people forget is that this marketing of the year, the presents, the tree, the dinners, all this is peripheral. We forget what's most important, right? And that is to try to get in that Christ-like consciousness, to try to actually remember what Christmas is all about, what Thanksgiving is all about, what these things are all about. And they're not about, buying an endless amount of presents so that people are appeased and that these gifts are given. It's almost turned into just a marketing ritual instead of a day of worship, recognizing the Christ consciousness, recognizing, the good in the world. And I'm right there with you, EDP, 100%, man. We are blessed. I remember the pipe situation being crazy where the guy you called in said he had, it was not something, yep, correct. Very correct, fearlessly. These are and these are things like the person I spoke with when they told me this. Let me just, when I got this message, hey, just so you know, this property is, taken all this damage and all this stuff has happened and tried to burn it down allegedly. I don't have all the information, with people in the home, and there's holes in the doors and a screwdriver in the wall. And just horrific stuff. It reminded me of just how blessed I really am and how many of us really are, that this time of year, can be dedicated for the principles it stands for. In other words, my mind, if I was partying like a rock star back in the day and somebody would have called me with this, my initial reaction would have been like, well, screw this person. I'm going to get even. These people are attacking me. This is my personal property. But what's wild is that did not occur to me at all. In fact, it still really hasn't occurred to me, which is strange because quite some time has transpired. My initial thought was, oh my gosh, this poor family. Oh, this poor person. What can I do to help? It's unfortunate that these things happen, but I immediately, and this is hard, I immediately started praying for the guy, praying for the person, praying for the individual, because I think good people do bad things when bad energy jump in, is involved. And let's face it, and that's weird. It's kind of got me shocked a little bit, to be honest, but that's what I'm striving for is, that's what we have to worry about. All the stuff is just temporary, but long term, what matters is people, relationships, individuals, and trying to maintain positivity. So I do really hope this person's okay and their family's okay, and that, unfortunately, it looks like, some bad things happened. Okay, so let's move on. This phone call was crazy today. This individual that called me said that the FBI and the military were involved, still studying this particular cattle mutilation, and it reminded me of how how sick I got when I was close to the cow. He did not want to get, or I'm sorry, the bull. He did not want to get near the carcass when they were asking him questions. He said, "I'm just going to hang out down here south of the gates end of the carcass." And while he was down there and they were doing their thing, and I should get into the fact that he's not exactly trusting all law enforcement right now because it goes all the way up. And I mean, we're talking up to a federal level, multiple federal agencies at this point. But you just don't ever know what they're really doing. And we were talking about that today. So anyway, he was there within proximity, but south of the gates and south of this carcass that the FBI and military people were investigating. And he was just kind of walking around and looking for like arrowheads and stuff and, looking for cool stuff that's on his property. It's a very remarkable property, does not disappoint in the least. And he saw something white sticking out of the dirt. And when he reached down, he pricked himself with it and realized it was a syringe. Now, why that's important is we've talked to some veterinarians. There seems to be a little bit of residue on the syringe. Local authorities, well, we're going to get into that in a minute. So why this is important is if you've done research into cattle mutilations and you know about Zamora, this is a local law enforcement individual in New Mexico. If you're familiar with the Dulce case, the Zamora UFO incident, he was his name was Lonnie Zamora, and this is peripherally involves cattle mutilations, UFO sightings, all sorts of stuff. But Lonnie Zamora had a UFO sighting that occurred in 1964 in Socorro, New Mexico. He saw two people beside a shiny object that later rose into the air, accompanied by a roaring blue and orange flame. Now, what's weird is other things were seen. There's artist impressions out there, but other things were seen. There were smoldering grass and bushes. There was shallow holes in the ground that looked like they were from almost like a tripod landing, from landing gear. And then, of course, we have these cattle mutilations in the nearby area. Okay. If you fast forward into some of this stuff, some of the law enforcement and some of the researchers that looked into some of the cattle mutilations in New Mexico and other places believed that maybe the government was in some way involved because they found things like gas masks. They found telltale signs like hypodermic needles, for example. This is why this is interesting at this point. that we have this, white hypodermic needle sticking out of the dirt, and the possibility for a bit of residue on the syringe that will have to be checked out with mass spectrometry. I can't talk today. Spectrometry, mass spectrometry. So, yeah. So if there is this possibility, which you have to just uncover, look under every rock, look under every leaf, figure everything you can out. But if there is a possibility that there could be some government involvement, this is going to blow this out of the water. Now, since then, there's been we're trying to work with some labs. One of them is here in Las Vegas. I won't name the lab, but owned by somebody I know the owner of the lab. And interestingly, I know them through someone that went to school up in the area where this ranch was at. And this person, when I was talking to this person that I know this lab owner through, he actually went to school up there, went to college up there, and he started telling me stories about the occult and the Satan worshipers and all of this dark stuff that he encountered when just randomly, I hadn't brought anything up, that he encountered in this particular area. Now, this particular area has a long history of really dark rituals taking place. And there is an allotment of dark adepts who, believe it or not, local law enforcement is aware of. And they have a list of, and these people openly do what we're talking about. So we don't know. This syringe may have government ties. This syringe could have ties to the occult. Maybe there was a ritual taking place out there and they injected the animal with this. I'm just brainstorming here. We have no evidence of this yet, except for the syringe itself. But what is interesting is it appears that, let me jump into, EDP says Lonnie's sighting was super interesting. It was. Lonnie's sighting is one of it's not only entertaining, but the aftermath, right, of Socorro counties in New Mexico, the aftermath was really crazy because it brought in like UFO tourists. Stone walkways and steps were built into the arroyo from the mesa top to make it more accessible. There was a rock walkway circling that's the supposed landing site that included like wooden benches. Like it became a mecca. And it's an important part of New Mexico history. So the cattle mutilation thing is interesting too, because we have nearby, we had some we had White Sands Missile Range, right? A United States Army military testing area and firing range located there nearby. And there was the Alamogordo bombing and gunnery range. And of course, Zamora claimed this is a conventional explanation from what he saw. This kind of egg-like, almost like some of the stuff we're seeing these days. Like this egg-like craft, sort of this oblate spheroid of a craft, kind of looks like an egg. If you followed Barber and, that footage of that egg below a helicopter being held by straps, kind of looked like that, according to the artist's renditions of the UFO on claims by Zamora. But more interesting than the egg itself, of course, there were two people he saw, or hominids next to it. I shouldn't say people, but something human-like. And let's see. Oh, very interesting message. I'll get to that. But what's very interesting is there was also a lunar lander test by White Sands Missile Range. The lunar lander, or the moon lander, of course, is a spacecraft designed to land on the surface of the moon. And The Apollo lunar module, regardless of what you think about the Apollo mission, I won't get into my opinion of that. But the Apollo lunar module is the only lunar lander to have ever been used in human space flight, allegedly. And this time period, this happened in 1964, and the Apollo lunar module was allegedly used, completing 6 lunar landings from 69 to 72. So we have a very close government program with a similar technology. And but I mean, the real deal about that egg shape is kind of what blow people away. Not to mention the roaring blue and orange flame, but there's a lot of this Utah case that is similar to this Middle Rio Grande Basin, New Mexico case with Lonnie Zamora. And now there's even more that is similar because there have been lights in the sky. There have been government craft in the sky, and I'm going to get into that. This is why we need to do mass spectrometry on this particular syringe that is now in the mix. And there's this, the ranchers in the area just don't trust some of the authorities at the highest levels because allegedly they have been spraying stuff. These fixed-winged aircraft started spraying what's known as a government allotment, and owners of the ranches said that they weren't given a heads up. Now, what's more interesting than that is some of this stuff took place during that government shutdown we had. There was government involvement, which how do you do this sort of thing when there's a government shutdown unless it is some sort of secret or black project, right? So they've been spraying stuff. And on this particular ranch where this cattle mutilation took place, they've been seen spraying stuff at 8 a.m. in the morning from a fixed wing. And that's pretty early in the morning to be doing these things. Also, black helicopters have been seen, which is very interesting. And this case is getting more and more interesting. So now we have this syringe. Hey, what's up? God is love. 528 hertz. How's it going, my man? Good to see you in here. So now we have this syringe that's involved with an unknown substance on it. There's still some residue. And we have these cattle mutilations. This is the third potential cattle mutilation here on this particular property. I'm not going into some of the other nearby ranches. This particular property, 3. This last one is by far the most provocative and textbook. If I know many of you, I don't want to rehash the whole cattle mutilation with the images and the pictures and some of the high strangeness that took place, but some of the figures that were caught on trail cams, etc. Like one actually appears to have like horns, which is very eerie. And it's just a wild case. Now, speaking of wild, I could talk about this case all day, but speaking of wild, I got to get to a couple other topics, and I have to take my kids to go see the Budweiser. What are they? The Budweiser horses here in just a minute. But they love those horses, those big Clydesdales, all dressed up for Christmas. So in the Middle East, let's talk weird. Get a little bit weird and high strangeness related. Anyway, a number of interesting animals have been seen at that ranch. Strange figures that are bipedal with like horns appearing on their heads almost. This individual even has a still image that, well, they're all strange. All of these strange lights flying around different areas, and some shadows that are so massive that they're impossible to explain. And they're in the shape, I'll just say it, they're in the shape of reptilian-like creatures in some cases, literally looking like raptors or T-Rex or smaller T-Rex. It sounds crazy, but one of them is in fact kind of a shadowy version of that. This is just off of trail cameras, and he's got cameras all over the property now. So we can't say for sure what it is, but some of these shadows appear in very strange shapes. That's important to integrate before we screen all of this video evidence. So let's get into what's happening weird wise in the world. And I talked to somebody about this earlier today. We were discussing doing some experiments on another property with some interesting tunneling devices. And what we actually ended up discussing, and he had not realized that this was happening, is the fact that there has been blood rain hitting Iran. This is incredible. There's footage online showing the landscape turned totally red due to what they're calling a rare geological phenomenon. If you've read the Bible or remember the plagues, you know, the water turning to blood, this they're calling it blood rain, but allegedly Iran's Hormuz Island turned bright red this week as the soil flowed red water, sea in the sea. The soil was turning red. The water was turning deep crimson. Viral videos have captured all of this. And the phenomena seems to parallel depictions of red water in the Bible, you know, blood rain, which have historically been interpreted as a sign of the end of time. Now, what's interesting is, of course, the scientists have keyed in and they've called it, well, locally, they call it Golak, which is the rains interacting with iron oxide, causing water nearby to turn red. And this research has allegedly scientists have confirmed that the red waters are created by an abundant iron oxide rich red soil. Now, Hormuz Island is geologically pretty well known for its minerals, its colorful soils, and they've called it Rainbow Island. But this is a really interesting, you know, bunch of images when you see what it looks like. You know, people literally there at the ocean, and the ocean is like all red and the water's all red. And it's pretty incredible. So this individual was unfamiliar with that, and I pointed him in the direction of that. The other weird thing that's been happening is, I'm sure you all have seen, I caught my wife even going into this photo dump that's been released of Epstein Island. Let's see here. We need to get the tail number of that helicopter. Yeah, we do. That's exactly right, EDP. And the pterodactyl fearlessly phoenixing. Yes, those have been seen as well in the Uinta Basin and around about an 80-mile area. So yeah, Epstein Island photo dump, pretty amazing. Everybody and anybody who's anybody seems to be in this photo dump. It's pretty amazing. But one person I know is not in the photo dump, and one person who people have joked in the in the Eastern Bloc is Russian President Vladimir Putin, who has allegedly, you know, you're not going to see any pictures of him at Epstein Island. Let's go that far. But he has allegedly just recently declared a holy war. He started this back on, oh my gosh, the end of September, really. But he's doubling down. And this is really interesting. He's basically saying that there is a holy war on Western Satanism. He is invoking this is very odd. He is invoking this holy war, and he signed an eagle embossed leather bound tome declaring 4 Ukrainian regions be part of Russia in rites observed in a palatial hall, lots of clapping, everybody in uniform. But during all of this, he also claimed this holy war that was basically aimed on Western Satanism. And many people have taken this to mean that he is declaring a war on the Hollywood elites who practice, according to some allegations, who practice some of the stuff you see behind me. Baal worship, the cult of Baal, worshiping Moloch, things like the Bohemian Grove, where there is an owl that they do the cremation of care. So we've captured unexplained rituals that have taken place at some of these locations, but that's the insinuation that, some of these rituals similar to what this rancher and people in this particular area have claimed have gone on for years, these dark occult rituals at night with guys in robes and making burnt offerings and rituals and blood sacrifices, praising old ancient familiars or darker entities. Interestingly, I recently, this is just fascinating to me, was reading the Book of Jubilees. And if you've ever read the Book of Jubilee, this is a book that I don't want to mess this up. This is a book that goes into like pre-Genesis. It's non-canonical. So in other words, most biblical scholars say, hey, this is just a little bit out there, sort of like the Book of Enoch, right? It's definitely legit, but it's just a little out there, sort of like the Book of Enoch, which I also love. But there is this character in the Book of Jubilees, and his name is Mastema, Mastema. And he's a significant figure in the Apocrypha, the literature, especially the Book of Jubilees, representing the angel of hostility, like just a brutal name. Also, he's called the adversary, aka Satan, and he tests humanity's faith by tempting them and bringing trials. And he's even been allegedly attributed to be like proposing Abraham's sacrifice of Isaac and causing the plagues in Egypt, all with God's permission. So the causing of the plagues in Egypt, that the blood red, the water will turn to blood, the frogs, the lice, the death of your firstborn, brutal stuff. But it would make sense that the quote unquote adversary or angel of hostility would take great pleasure in doing these things. But allegedly, oh wow, this is cool. I gotta answer this guy. I've got an image of something pretty wild here. This could turn into something with this syringe. Okay. So anyway, where was I? Blood red water in Iran. We have this white syringe sticking out of the dirt near this cattle mutilation. And if we are studying this, if the dark occult and these dark rituals have been around for thousands of years, which I believe they have, and according to most people that I've talked to, they believe they have. Many of them are multi-generational Illuminati members who their families have the same key characteristics where they worship these dark entities, and these entities will follow family bloodlines, and you have to keep giving them stuff. Entities like Baal or Moloch, they demand sacrifice. If you don't give them sacrifice, they start to get hostile. They no longer work for you. They start to work against you. And I always remember that gentleman this is a guy that killed someone. He worshiped a dark entity. And he would always give him something like a pack of gum, anything. He got locked up in a prison, and he had nothing for this entity during a key calendar moment. And I'm going to get into the key calendar moments when it comes to like Mastema and these other things in a second. But he said, give me something, anything, whatever you got in your pocket. If you don't do it, this thing is going to kill me. And they didn't give him anything. And sure enough, this entity, this demon, this Mesopotamian demon called Pazuzu, which he worshipped and which he changed his name to. This guy actually took on the name Pazuzu. Apparently attacked this guy. He had brutal wounds. He was found dead the next morning. So these demons can, the suggestion, right, is that they can allegedly turn on you. Okay, so when it comes to Mastema, the Book of Jubilees, and these key calendar moments, something else that really like stood out to me was um, something else that really interesting is that we are on a false timeline. We are all on a false timeline, and we don't even realize it. If you read the Book of Jubilees, you realize that allegedly there is a calendar that's like the original calendar, and this is wild. The if you look at the Book of Jubilees and you look at the calendar, you'll see that it is. I'm going to probably post this online so everybody has a copy, because it's unfair that we don't have a copy of this. It's hard to find, but there's 364 days in the year, not 365. And the Book of Jubilees calendar is a precise solar based calendar, not a moon based calendar. Now, obviously, solar sun worship is different than lunar worship. Lunar worship is more of this stuff, right? More of the occult, worshiping the moon cycles. Solar worship in the Book of Jubilees, the calendar is a precise solar based system, allegedly from God Himself, centered on a 364-day year, divided into 52 weeks, 7 days each, and 13 months or months, 13 months, each 28 days, instead of, months with like these weird 31, and then one is 28 and the other one's 30. But this is specifically perfectly calibrated, where there's no leap year, there's no falling back, there's no springing forward, there's none of this human intervention to try to make everything equalize, because it's already perfect. According to the Book of Jubilees, the calendar, this precise God, allegedly straight, like holy calendar, and the type of thing that Enoch would have, and Melchizedek, and these guys who allegedly knew what, I mean, the ultimate sorcerers, right? If you want to call them that, or the ultimate wise men. But they went off of this 364-day year, divided into 52 weeks, 7 days each, 13 months, each 28 days. Now, if you ever see the shell of a turtle, that's exactly how it's divided. Most turtles have that exact division, which is very strange, but we see this naturally in a lot of cases. And what's important about this is, if we're running off of, well, I'll just show you. If we're running off of a whack calendar, let me see, I just had it here. I don't know where I put my calendar. All right, I lost my calendar, but doesn't matter. You guys have seen a calendar, regular calendar. If we're running off of a whack calendar that adds an extra day into the year, and this becomes important, but if we are running off of this calendar that is off, even by a little bit, but this one's off by a lot, then we miss the fixed specific days of the week, especially things like Wednesdays, festivals, solstices. These are central to very important beliefs, emphasizing divine order and alignment with creation. And if we're running off a human created calendar that's kind of just whatever works, whenever they want it to work, that's just not going to work. So I will post that both on the Hero Paranormal Facebook page. And remember, it's solar, not lunar. And it's got quarterly structure, which is important. The entire year is divided into fourths, like the 4 seasons. And the year is divided into 4 perfectly, divinely equal quarters, each starting on a Wednesday, and the day heavenly bodies were created, which was Wednesday. And it's really interesting that the days of the week, are very important. We have obviously Sunday, which is the worship of the sun. We have Monday, which is the worship of the moon, Moon Day. We have, Tuesday, which is actually the worship of Mars. We have let's see, Wednesday, uh, which is the worship of Mercury. So all of these, and I'm talking about celestial bodies here. These are worship times for celestial bodies. Really important to align yourself with this. If it's correct, if these are important times to structure for feast, for days to celebrate certain things. I mean, if there is a divine order and alignment with creation, we've totally missed it. Or more likely, the elites have it, but they give us this crappy calendar, so we miss it. And that's why it's important that I think you guys look at it. I'll post it on the Facebook Hero Paranormal page, and I'll also post it on the Space Wolf Research Facebook page. Okay, so there's that, pretty wild. Then, of course, we have interstellar. Speaking of objects, we have the Three Eye Atlas that unbelievable, right? Close approach. This interloper from beyond the solar system, which is right around here the same time that a lot of strange things seem to be happening. We have red rain. We have odd things that people are doing. We have, of course, the solstice coming up. We have raw materials coming together from comets, asteroids, planets, allegedly making this up. And we have people who are whistleblowers for things like CERN, not NASA, but things like CERN, who are indicating its origin lies elsewhere in the Milky Way, that it also happens to have non-corporeal occupants, and it may have interstellar visitors that have the potential to be far older than anything we're familiar with. So we have that going on all around the same time of these other strange goings on. And I even just said in the recent podcast, this thing is close. Keep your temple clear. Don't let any dark energies into you. And then I had this event with my own personal property, and I've seen other horrible events, like, of course, Nick Reiner, and worse. I mean, there's horrible stuff happening all over the place, and it seems like somehow, some reason, some of these cosmic influences may have something to do with it. Maybe we are just vessels, and maybe we have to protect these vessels, our bodies, our consciousness, when we have some of these cosmic events happening, because maybe there are just kind of like these cosmic hitchhikers ready to jump into bodies and do things for whatever reason. In other stuff, we have Candace Owens, of course, sharing that shocking witness claim of Mitch, who said he was at Fort Huachuca in Arizona. That's happening. Lots of strange stuff. And man, weird times. So there they are. They're at the door. It looks like I'm going to have to probably take these kids to see the Clydesdales. Sorry, I couldn't do this longer. But yeah, hey, New, it's good to see you in the chat, my man. I hope you all have a very blessed and Merry Christmas. I will continue to jump into this stuff, and I want to dive deeper into like this calendar system, because people like Enoch, that it becomes important, because people like Enoch lived exactly this amount of time, right? He lived as many days as is in our calendar, 365 days. We're going to delve into that in the future, but there's a lot more going on. I know I keep saying I got to go, but I really do. Merry Christmas to all of you. God bless you. Have a blessed night. Keep your eyes to the skies, feet on the ground, and don't forget to take a look around.